Welcome back to Life in Review. I'm Josefa Salinas, your host. We all know I love books, because I talk about them all the time. I believe that a book can answer just about anything you got going on. You can learn things, you can discover things, you can, escape into a book. You can learn about just about anything that you want to know how to do. It can be done in a book. Yes, it's all out there. So, what are the best books so far this year? Lots of people are reading more than ever. And I love it. People are always hitting me up saying, "Hey, Josefa, what's a good book to read?" Or "What can I do where can I find this?" Or "What can I give to the kids?" Because I love recommending kids' books. So Amazon has announced their 2020's best books of the year so far. Now remember, we're only halfway through, so who knows what else could end up on this list. But right now, Sarah Gelman is with us. She is the one that kind of makes this decision for Amazon, or probably listens to a lot of people and then makes that decision. But she's here to talk about Amazon's list this morning. Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I am fabulous. And I tell you, I love books. Anybody can tell you that. I probably have 3,000 in my house, and people
Oh my
all
goodness. Well,
during
I
this,
love books too.
yeah,
So this is going to be a fun conversation.
absolutely. During the shutdown, people would come over and go, because I have three different areas in the house where there are books. And they're like, can I go look for a book? I'm like, okay, what are you looking for? And they kind of tell me the kind of genre that they're looking for. I said, all right, you want to go to the bookcase over there? Because I kind of group them in
How do
thoughts
you
and
organize your books? I feel like that's a big question, especially these days when people are doing so many Zoom interviews and we're seeing bookshelves. So are you just shelving as you go? Do you have some sort of system for it?
well, in my house, I have three bookshelves in my bedroom. Those books are like my favorite books, my go-to books that I read again and again. And if you borrow one from there, I'm going to ask you like to either read it at my house, or because it's usually a family member, or I keep track. Like I want to know when that book's coming back. Then there's another book in the upstairs living room that's, oh gosh, it's probably 7 feet long by about 6 feet high, and that's my second favorite books. And I kind of keep, there's fiction over here, here's kids books, here's self-help books, and they all kind of grouped in those kind of areas. And the ones downstairs, those are just all different kinds of books, but they are in areas around each other, like the kind of books where you go to learn something, fiction books, kids books. I kind of do it like that, broad
I love
general
it.
categories. So how about
I also have a
Amazon?
shelf of sort of my favorite books
Yeah.
too. I think it's important to have that.
Oh, absolutely. It's the ones that you read again and again, like The Alchemist. I've probably read The Alchemist
Yeah, and you
10
want to look
times.
at too. You
Yeah.
want to see them every day.
Yep, absolutely. So how does Amazon go about picking their books for this list?
So we actually have a small team at Amazon that is basically a team of people with book selling, editorial, publishing experience, and we're all book lovers. We've all been book lovers our whole lives. And we're basically reading hundreds of books throughout the year and, thousands together. But every month we put out a list called the best books of the month. And it's all the new books that are coming out that month. We're reading a ton of them and then basically voting on our top 10. And in a really, really tough month, sometimes it's the top 12. And so we put together these lists that are best books of the year so far, which is a list that just came out. And then we also look at best books of the year at the very end of the year. And so we're pulling from our best books of the month list, but also asking ourselves, did we miss anything? And if I always feel like if we've done our job well, we haven't, but sometimes we miss things. Something comes out and sometimes a book is published out of our time frame and we miss it because of that. But we're basically looking at those lists and we're voting on what we think are the best books of the year so far. And it's incredibly fun, especially if you love books, and narrowing down, all of these lists into what we think are really, we have a top 20 list, and then we have top 20 lists in tons of different categories, everything from children's books in all different ages, also cooking, food, and wine, nonfiction, fiction, science fiction, so a little something for everyone. But we do have the top 20 list too.
Nice. So let's talk about the books that made this list. Who was number one?
So
Does it go by? I mean, is if you're number one, does that mean you were the best, or just they're just in random
uh,
order?
yes, It does actually mean that you're the best. And we obsess over who will be certainly 1 through 20, but even more so 1 through 10, 1 through 5, and, 1 through 3 too is, it's, we definitely, it's a friendly fight, but we definitely argue about it. And this year, I was really excited about the book that we decided on for number one. It's The Girl with the Louding Voice, which is a debut novel by an author named Abi Dare. And it is a novel about a 14-year-old Nigerian girl. It's set in present-day Nigeria. And she's sold into servitude by her father when her mother, who is a huge proponent of education for girls, passes away. And the young girl's name is Aduni. And she basically has this really tough road ahead of her. And yet she manages to stay incredibly strong and incredibly hopeful and just basically face all of these challenges that come her way. And it's just such a hopeful story that you really feel like, you as a reader could survive anything if Aduni can survive this. So I feel like this year, it's been such a tough year for all of us. It was especially poignant for us this year. So this is a book that you read and you can't help but just feel hopeful about the future. So we decided on that for number one.
Now, number two deals with the subject of mental illness. Is this a true story or is this a fictional story, but just reflective of the subject of mental illness?
This is actually a true story. And I feel like this story is just so off the wall that if it weren't true, you could not believe it. If someone made this up, you would say, nah, I don't believe it. That's too weird. So this is about a family called the Galvins. They're an American family who had 12 children. And 6 of those children were diagnosed with schizophrenia while they were still teenagers. So it shows both the effects of this illness on the family. So you can imagine the children that weren't affected wondering if they would one day, start seeing effects of mental illness. But it also details the history and the science behind this disease and shows you really how this one family has supported the research behind schizophrenia just by the sheer matter of their numbers, and also, within hereditary science in mental illness as well. So it's just a really, really fascinating story.
Is there a good children's book on this list?
There are tons of children's books on this list. Our number one children's book was this book called Black Brother, Black Brother. And it is, I would say it's probably middle grade YA, and it is about 2 brothers. One of them is in 7th grade and the other I think is in 8th or 9th. And they're biracial, and one of the brothers presents as white and the other one presents as black. And the brother that presents as black is always feeling less than. And he actually decides that he's going to learn how to fence because fencing is very big at this private school that he goes to. And so it's about his journey to learn how to fence and really be comfortable with who he is. So I love that book. I think it was a great addition to the list.
How about a great romance novel? You've got to love those.
Definitely. And one of the things that I love about romances is I feel like these days it's really not like the bodice rippers that people used to think of when they think of romance. You certainly get those, but you also get these really fun modern romances. So the one that we named our number one this year is called The Happy Ever After Playlist by an author, Abby Jimenez. And this is one of those more modern, sort of like, kind of like if you love rom-com movies, then I feel like this is a romance for you.
Uh-huh. So how do you guys actually pick them? Like, do you sit around in a group and say, oh, this one's the best? No, that one's the best.
I know it sounds sort of funny when you talk about it, but we all have categories that we specialize in. So everything from, we have someone that specializes in more genre fiction, which would be romance and science fiction. We have someone who specializes in just mystery thrillers and suspense, and someone who specializes in children's books and cooking books. And so we're reading in those categories, but also just the books that are interesting to us that we want to pick up and sort of think that that's indicative of what a customer might see and want to pick up. And so we're reading, all or some, depending on how much we like the book. So sometimes you start a book and just say, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be in there. And so you put it aside. And that is personally very hard for me. I hate not finishing books, but with this job, I have to sometimes put books aside that I don't love. And then we have a committee of people that is beyond the team, And we basically write reviews and kind of rally around the books that we love, and we vote on them. And that's how we decide. And normally when we're working together, right now we're all working remotely from our homes, we do sit in a room and talk about them. And now we've had to take that to the phone, but it's still been working really well.
Now, have you noticed an uptick in book buying or book, like Kindle books and things like that on Amazon? Because I would imagine that there are plenty of ways that you guys can determine if people are buying more books.
Right. I don't have the exact data behind if people are buying more than they were before, but I am looking at what books people are buying now. And we have this list called Amazon Charts that actually looks at the books that people are both buying and reading within the past week. So we're using, for reading, we're looking at Kindle and also audio data, and basically seeing sometimes people buy a book and they just put it on their shelf, and other times people buy a book and they tear through it. And so we want to actually look at what are people reading right now? We've seen books that are reflecting today's news, which is one thing that's been really interesting about looking at Amazon Charts right now. And then we see books that are really popular that are definitely escapist reads. Like there's an author that I absolutely love called Ellen Hilderbrand, and she used to write predominantly sort of summer novels, beach reads, and now she actually does 2 books a year. But she has a new book out called 28 Summers that I actually love, and that's doing really well right now because she has a big fan base, but also people are looking for escapist reads right now too.
Now, when you're looking at the books, do you ever talk with the publishers to see what kind of books they're buying?
We do. We talk to publishers all the time. I would say that we're in daily touch with people from the publishing houses, and they're also sharing their publication list with us early so that we can get a sense of what's coming up, because we're reading many months in advance. Like I'm reading books that are published right now in, I think I've gone as far as October 2020 right now, but I have a book sitting in front of me that I'm super excited about that a publisher sent to me and said, Sarah, I think you would like this book. I'd love if you would take a look at it. And so when they, go through the trouble of kind of saying I think this is the book that Sarah would like, I want to make sure that I'm actually taking a look at it.
And what are the kinds of trends that you're seeing from the publisher side?
One thing that has happened this year that I think has been interesting is that they've moved publication dates around due to coronavirus. So I would say the first half of the year, there were amazing books published. Obviously, you see this list, but also a lot of books have been moved into the second half of the year, and even some books moved into 2021. But books that were meant to be published this summer have moved out. So I think that there will be a lot of books coming out in the fall. And then you also see, the genre of this sort of psychological thriller suspense in the vein of Gone Girl is a book from many years ago, Girl on the Train, Woman in the Window, sort of these, they all seem to have girl or woman in the title, but books like that tend to do really well. And I think we have an amazing reader of that genre on our team, and it's really figuring out what are the best of those. If you're someone that's not going to read every single thriller and suspense book that's put out, what are the best books of this genre that you can read? So those are always really popular as well. And then, it is a political election year, so we'll see some political books coming out too.
Oh, yes. I'm sure that there's a bunch of those on the way. We can't ever seem to get away from those. Whenever it's election year, they pile on, or whenever there's a controversy, they pile on.
Yep.
So would you say that book reading has gone up?
People are definitely reading, and I think people are reading. They're reading books, they're reading articles, they're listening to podcasts. So, I am someone that is very hopeful about the state of reading, and I know that there are many book lovers out there they're reading print books, they're reading, Kindle or digital books, however they want to do it, whatever works for them. And I know as a book lover, sometimes I'm looking at this beautiful jacket for The Girl with the Louding Voice right now. This is a book that I read digitally, and then I actually ordered the print copy of it because it was so pretty. I wanted to have it on my shelf.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that I like to have the book in my hand. I love turning the pages, actually turning the pages, folding back the corner on the page when I have to put the book down and go do something else, and then coming back and knowing right where I left off. I love having a book in my hand, and it seems like kids really enjoy having a book in their hands, little kids especially.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially for, really little kids. I have 2 little boys, neither of whom can read yet. Especially the older one, he doesn't necessarily need to hold the book. He definitely will turn the pages and kind of pretend like he's reading. But the younger one, he loves to eat books. But also, he likes he needs that chunky page of a board book to turn the page. One thing that has been cool is a lot of kind of well-known picture books are now coming to the board book format. There's a series called Llama Llama that I love and my kids love, and she has published both, the traditional picture book that you think of with the glossy pages, but also put it in board book format. So it's easier for, those like little hands to turn the pages if they want to pretend like they're reading it themselves.
Now, give us some social media where people can go and learn more about this incredible list, the 20 best books of 2020, or the best books of 2020
Yes.
so far.
So you can go to amazon.com/best books so far. And we also have our own blog at amazon.com/Amazon Book Review. Or you can follow us at Amazon Books on all of the social channels.
Well, thank you so much for being with us this morning. And anytime you have some more talk about books, this is the place to come back to.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
All right. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You too.
Stick around. We're talking all about texting and driving next, right here.